All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Shane.
He is, and I'm Lex.
No one cares.
Yeah, pretty much. All right.
Well then.
All right. Let's move right along. We're going to talk about using a fairly new feature. It's been around for several months, several versions, I should say. But we're going to talk about using file and registry conditions in your PDQ deploy packages. You've seen the conditions, hopefully, if you have Pro or Enterprise. Conditions such as, only run this step if you have a 64-bit OS, or if you're on Windows 7 or Windows 8.1 or something. The conditions based on OS, conditions based on logged on state. Only run this if someone's logged on, only run this if someone's not logged on, etc. We added some new ones, file and registry.
Yep, and we'll give you some examples of how to do that and, kind of what we were thinking when we put that together.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
All right, so we're going to, before we start, are there any questions that anybody, do you want to go to questions now or no?
We can throw up a question.
Yeah, sure.
Let's hit it.
All right, first question from Tim D. I have created a Regedit key that helps keep numlocks enabled. When the computers boot up, the numlock key is enabled, but when I have users log in, it is turned off. I am using Windows 10 Education 64-bit. How can I deploy this file so that it would affect all users and have numlocks enabled at all times for all users?
Okay, I'm going to open up the registry to answer your question. So this isn't really the file or registry conditions, but I want to answer your question.
Look, let's ask these guys. They can do my research for me, right?
If you just go to Regedit and I'm not sure how you're doing this, but there is a value under HKey local machine, or pardon me, I'm sorry, HKey users. Go to default, and control panel, I believe. Yep, keyboard. There's your keyboard. So if you see the initial keyboard indicators, it'll often have a very high integer there, and that usually works. But if you want to kind of override everything, what's been fairly consistent are three values, and what you're probably looking for is number 2.
Well, you just made that real simple, didn't you?
Yeah, 2 means turn numlock on. 1 means turn it off after log off, I believe, and then 0 means it's disabled.
So if this is default users, that doesn't matter who logs in.
Yeah, this is what I've used. Now, it could be that you have a group policy, a GPO.
That's where I'd have done it.
Yeah, and there's a GPO that basically, I don't think there's actually a native GPO setting. It's people usually run a script, which will do the same thing. They'll modify this value, like if they do it at the user logon, so it would be in the HKey current user. If they do it at the machine logon, then it would be here in the defaults. But if you've got a non-number 2, even at that longer number, you might want to just try. If you want to use deploy, push out a .reg file, but have that value be 2 for keyboard indicators. Under the dot default.
I went to 5-finger death punch, man. I'm still doing this.
Yeah, 2 should probably work for you. Of course, you can create a registry scanner in inventory to see what this value is in dot defaults of all your users. You can't use the registry scanner to look at the HKey current user, but you can have it traverse through the user. Yeah, the user. Well, all the users. I mean, here you can see, under HKey users, you've got all these other different users here. You can traverse those and see what those values are. But really, the dot default, that should take care of it. No guarantees, but that's what I've always used, and then I've used it to great benefit. Also, I seem to recall on, I can't remember what OS he said he was using, but in Windows 10, coming up from hibernation, there's sometimes that initial keyboard indicators isn't honored. Waking up from a Windows 10 hibernation. But I had just read that before.
Yeah, it was Windows 10 Education.
All right, so if you are not doing a full shutdown and you're just doing letting the machine go into hibernation mode, that might be an issue.
Might not work. Yeah,
because of the way it initializes everything. if you have especially if you have a GPO script that's run. Like I say, mostly from GPOs, this is run from a script.
Okay.
So the GPO will just call a script that's a log on, log off, power up, power down, depending on the machine or user context. Hopefully that'll do it for you. Report back if there's a problem, but that's keyboard indicators.
Now, the interesting thing about this, though, this would not be a good condition. You know, I'm only going to install if the number locks key is on. I wouldn't use that as a condition.
But you could.
You could.
You could say that. So let's take a peek.
Speaking of which, we ought to take a look at one.
So let's look at a file condition first of all. So we've updated the Notepad++, and just kind of through attrition we'll be updating these. But I'm going to open up the Notepad++ 7.1, and you'll notice that in 7 they introduced a 32 and a 64-bit installation of Notepad++. That's why this step 4 we can kind of get away with what we're doing. In step 4 we're saying, if you want to remove the auto update feature of Notepad++, kind of the way you have to do it, it's kind of kludgy. If you want to do this for all users, is just to remove the updater folder. So that's what we're doing. We're running this updater folder, but we've got an extra condition here. And the conditions states, in the conditions tab, and remember conditions run per step. So you can see we've got a file condition. You can click that down arrow to expand it where you can edit it. But here we're saying look in program files, that's the variable, so the % program files. And this one only works, we can get around this without having to do 2 steps, because now that Notepad++ comes out 64 and 32-bit, you only have to worry about program files x86 really on a 32-bit program installed on a 64-bit machine. Otherwise we'd have to have 2 steps, most likely.
Question for you, man. If you go back to the details on that, you'll see it's removing a directory. So are we doing a file search on a directory? Is that even possible?
Nope. That's a very good question. Thank you. In the conditions, you cannot, let's do that highlighter. In the conditions, you cannot do just a directory search. You have to actually specify a file in that directory. And the same with in the registry condition. You need to actually specify a value, and then it will compare a value name, and then it will compare that value. We could, notice here, we got program files. The second you see program files, we have a little option here that says also match program files x86. So we could check both areas, but if you notice the details, we're only using program files.
Yeah.
So the condition can say, hey, I'm detecting that you're doing this. Do you want to also look here? But
just
the
make
actual
sure
body,
it matches,
the body of our script, we're only looking at program files. So that's why you'd probably want a second condition if you had to handle the 32-bit app on a 64-bit. So all we're doing is saying, if Notepad++ updater folder exists with the file gup.exe. Now, you can go a little deeper here. You could actually say, maybe you only want to delete this if gup has a version in that file. If it's got a version, then you could say the version is less than this number, or greater than this number, or equals this number, do this. And you can say does not exist. Only run this step if this does not exist. In this case, we're saying, hey, if updater gup exists, then run this step, and that step will delete the updater folder.
Okay, so I just want to make sure, because this, I know we get a lot of support on this. Can't just go after a directory. There's got to be a file in that directory, and then of course you can run whatever you want against it.
In this case, the file is a file that we know would be there. This is actually the file that would handle the update, is gup.
Yeah.
But according to the documentation, really you want to just delete the whole updater folder.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when you delete the updater folder, that does prevent you from upgrading plugins if you do use plugins. So you kind of have to pick your poison.
Yeah.
On whether you want the auto update enabled or you want them to be able to do plugins for Notepad++. But this is how you would do that. Once again, you can also not just query off the existence of the file, but certain file attributes such as the version, the file version, product version, the description, product name, and the company name. And if you're wondering where you find that information, well, you can do an inventory scan on a file scanner to find out, or you can literally just go, let me just see if we've got Notepad++ here. If we do, we probably don't have the updater folder. Yep. but I'm going to right click, maybe this will happen. If you want to find out these additional items you can query on, usually in details, there it is. The file version is 7100, product version is 71, product name is Notepad++. So you could query off of those as well to make sure that those
You're grabbing the right
the
file,
headers, the headers match what you want. Because maybe, once again, you only want to do this on certain versions. So that's a file condition. So if I were to run this just on top, I'm just going to push this out to, this is Guinness.
Yep.
We should see that this does not, well, actually, see, it would run because the installation does create the updater. So we'll see. We'll show, what we want to do here is show you the output that you can expect.
Yeah.
You guys want to do a question?
Sure. Let's hit it.
Billy, before we, okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry.
That would be no, but I said yeah.
Hi, Monica.
Monica has a request, actually. Could you guys go over selectively uninstalling applications using file/registry conditions and how that could tie in with uninstall paths shown in inventory?
Okay. The answer is yes, you can do that. We can show that in the most recent Java package.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, Monica, I want to make sure that you understand this. When this package is being executed on a target, that target does not have access to inventory. You can use, and we'll cover this in a moment, you can use inventory to select the targets based off of file and registry. But once that kicks off on that target machine, it doesn't have access to go back and query.
It's not going to do it at runtime.
Yeah, like you can't say, hey, if this application exists, what's the uninstall string for this? You would actually have to look for that in the registry as part of the package.
Yeah.
So here's the output log. Notice for disable the auto update, we click this. Sure enough, it ran. I'm going to go ahead just so you can see what happens. I'm going to remove these three. I'm going to disable these three steps so that it doesn't reinstall that. So you can see what would happen if this step runs and there is no updater folder.
Yeah.
You will still
so
get
you see the output.
Yeah, you'll still see some.
There
So
it
no
is.
conditions were met. Step not run due to file condition. You can see that right there. And we'll click the output log, and you can see exactly what we said. You know, does this exist? No, it fails. If it existed but GUP didn't exist, it would still fail, etc. So you can see that breakdown on why we didn't run that based off of what you've specified.
Again, one of the takeaways, guys, is remember, you've got to go after a file, not just a directory.
Yes, thank you very much. So thank you for bringing that up. Do we have any other questions?
Next question comes from our friend all the way in Germany, Timo S. I have to replace an INI file, and I want to check the creation time of the old INI file. And if it is older than a specific date, replace it. I worked with file scanning in the past. Maybe there is an easier way?
Okay. Hi, Timo.
Hey, man.
Well, if you recall, similar to, let's go back to Notepad++ for a second. In fact, while I'm doing that, let me re-enable these steps.
That reminds me of the time I showed someone at the conference how to do a schedule, and I never turned it off. It ran that night and installed on all our machines in the office.
Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah.
That sounds like a Lex move to me.
Just remember,
So
I'm doing that to your machine after, man.
So if you notice that the creation time, modified time, accessed time, those cannot be accessed directly or natively through the file condition. But you did mention file scanner. And by the way, thank you. I know you sent this question in this morning, so I hurried and looked at it and I just created a test INI package here. We're going to use a file copy to look for the application.ini file for Firefox.
Okay.
If this file exists under the browser, how do you do the highlight?
Under the browser?
The target folder. There we go. If you see this right here,
That is so forced.
it's not by default. But if you place the application.ini file and then call Firefox a certain way, you can also kind of control how Firefox is run in that session. So you mentioned I believe you mentioned the creation date. You might want to be careful with a creation date. So I'm going to use to answer your question. You can get what you want, but you're going to want to use something like PDQ Inventory that can do a file scanner.
Yeah.
So I'm going to open up PDQ Inventory, and you're doing this so that you can find and properly target machines that have an old version of whatever INI file you're looking for. In this case, I'm going to go to Preferences. I just hit Control, comma, go down to Scan Profiles, and I added this a file scanner to
Applications.
the application's scan profile. I'm going to open this up. To add, you can simply click Add, and then add, your files or your registry or whatever scanner that you want. So I've got two different patterns in here, both looking for application INI. One is looking in program files, one's looking in program files x86.
I want to point this out just so you guys know. If you see how far down the path Shane went? If you don't go that far down the path, these scans are going to take a long time because they're going to search.
They really could.
The entire drive for that.
We have the ability, using wildcards, to scan a lot of files. You say, I want to look for all INI files on your C drive. That scan could take a while, just so you know. So you want to try to, when you're doing a file scanner or a registry scanner, you kind of want to get as narrow as you can and still get the data that you want. Here I know we're looking for application INI in the browser subdirectory. So that's part of the application's scanner or scan profile, and I've scanned that. I've created an application.ini collection, and this collection simply says, does the file application INI exist in a path that contains Mozilla Firefox / browser? All right. So this shows 3 machines that have that application INI. And then I said, which ones have the current one? Well, the computer Bateman. Which ones have the old?
How did you determine what was current?
It's a very good question. So you'd mentioned I believe the created date. You might, be careful about that. You might want to look closely at the modified date.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm gonna create a report before we do that. I'm gonna go right-click on this collection, and I'm gonna say New Report from Collection. And by doing a report from the collection, that means I take the filters that I've already got created, so it saves you a lot of copying and pasting, and use those filters, and then I can add these columns. By default, it's just going to show the computer name. I'm going to show file, we'll do file path, we'll do file name, because we actually want to show this, and then I'm going to show a bunch of these date fields. So this is the date accessed.
This is a perfect example of what you would use a report for as opposed to a collect. I can't even spit that out today, man.
So we're going to show those 3, and I'm going to hit save and run. So you can see the file date accessed. They've all been accessed today. The file date created. This is created because they were installed today. They were copied today.
Yeah.
But the date modified, that's kind of the one that the last time that file was actually changed, and I changed one value in Bateman's. So you can see Bateman has a date of 10/27, whereas Heineken and Minchin both have 10/19. So let's say that your INI file that you want to look for, you say I made a change on 10/27. So I want to show all computers that have anything from this INI file that's built before. So I'm going to go to the old collection. And notice I've just simply got the file. Yes, it has to match the application INI. It still has to be in that folder. But the date modified before 10/27 at 8 a.m. This will show those machines that have that modified date. In this case, Minchin and Heineken. Versus the current, which is simply the same filter. It's just the comparison instead of before is after 10/27 at 8. And hopefully that will. Now what I can do, because those conditions to check the date modified don't exist natively within the file condition, I can simply say, let's deploy this to, I'll choose my targets from PDQ Inventory, and we'll just say go into show me all the computers that have an old one There's Heineken and
There you go,
Mitchen.
boom.
So you've done some. So there's, as long as you have some type of inventory program like PDQ Inventory that can test.
Actually, pull date,
Yeah,
time
pull
fields,
this date. You can grab your targets off of that list. That's what I would recommend in your case, because you're looking at the at dates. If you're talking about file version in the header or product name or something, then you can use all of that natively within the file condition.
Yep.
Okay. Hopefully that answers your question.
We got another question?
Got a question, and an FYI, we'll be wrapping up our contest in about 5 minutes. So
3 minutes now.
about 3 minutes now. So get your guess in. We got the link in the chat. Dear Shane and Lex, does the registry setting being used as a condition have to be scanned in a PDQ inventory scan first to be used, or are registry settings evaluated on the fly at deployment? Jeff R.
Good question. They are evaluated at runtime.
Yep.
In fact, there is no reference back to inventory. It's kind of going back to Monica's question. Once that PDQ deploy runner, that's the process that runs your deployment on each target, once that runner process executes, it doesn't have access to inventory. So if you use your targets like we had just shown, then it would only be running on machines that, as of the last scan, had an old INI file. But if you just blasted this out to all computers, it would.
Yeah, conditions are run.
Yeah,
the second it hits
those
the
conditions
machine.
are run irrespective of PDQ inventory and whether or not you have a scanner for that. The reason I showed the PDQ inventory is because there are times, it's smart because you always want to make sure you're deploying to the right machines.
Obviously.
So add some intelligence to your deployments. But to answer the question, I think it was Timo's question, well, you can't do that natively, but here's how you can get the exact result you're looking for. So in answer to your question, it's on the fly. Let's take a peek at registry. How's that sound?
Love it.
So I'd mentioned that, we're still waiting for the Adobe Flash.
Let me ask you something. Did
Yeah.
you have to hack the registry?
I'm going to punch you.
I know. I love it, man. Shane hates the word hack.
I
Especially,
hate word hack for registry. I mean, there's certain hackers.
Is an appropriate word for other things.
Oh, yeah, it is.
You
It is.
modify
But
the registry.
it's like nails on the chalkboard. So every
Yeah,
time
yeah,
do anything with a registry, I'm going to drop the hack.
Go
on it.
hack
You
word
modify.
and write.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, we were going over one. Adam came up with the comparison of by using that same logic, if you modify a Word document, you just performed a word hack.
I did a word hack.
Walking to 7-Eleven, buying a drink, and performing a 7-Eleven hack.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm taking a peek at the Adobe Flash for IE. This is for Windows 10. Now, there's 3 flavors of Windows 10. There's your 1607 anniversary build.
Quite tasty, I must admit.
There's the 1511 that came out November of last year, and then
Kind of
there's
stale.
the base install. Those of you who are on the LTSB or the long-term servicing branch for Windows 10, you probably don't have 1511 or 1607. However, Microsoft releases Flash packages and patches respective to each of those versions.
Yeah.
So how do you determine which one to run? If you were to try to run the base Windows 10 64-bit patch on a machine that's got 1607, the anniversary build of Windows 10, it's going to fail. It's going to fail. So we add some conditions, registry conditions here. I'm going to click on the condition. So this is the Windows 10 32-bit 1607. The registry simply says, I'll expand this so you can see it a little better. Yeah, we're looking in the H key local machine hive. And then the value is Software Microsoft Windows NT current version, and the value is release ID. This value was just created at the 1511 build. So here we're saying if you see this in current version release ID value and the text equals 1607 and it's a 32-bit, notice up here on this condition, it's a 32-bit Windows 10, then execute this step. And of course, the 64-bit is the exact same, minus the 64-bit OS. And then we come down to 1511.
So, okay, you said they just introduced that at 1511. So how do we deal with the early versions?
It's a good question. Because we can't just say, hey, does this value exist? You've got to compare against a value. You've got to compare against the actual value.
So it's like the file. You can't just look for a directory. You got to look for, I need this value for this.
So what I've done, notice on these other ones, it's does this registry value exist? On the base install, or the LTSB, for those of you who don't do the anniversary and other builds, I did a does not exist. and because we know that release ID doesn't exist, but you still have to put a value in there. So I say, does release ID, does this value not exist if it begins with a 1? Well, both 1607 and 1511 begin with a 1. So this is a way we are planning.
This will work till
we
the
are planning
20s?
on doing a just
Till
without
2020s.
having to put a value.
Okay.
Just saying, does this value exist?
Okay, all right.
So this way, I know if I see that this value doesn't exist, that begins with 1. So 1511, 1607 both begin with 1. Run this one. Yeah, I had to think about that one.
I was going to say, how long were you sitting up?
No, I just thought, well, we don't do that. So what's something I can use to filter out? Well, the other ones both begin with 1,
Yeah.
and they're all going to begin with 1. In up until 2020,
Yeah.
because they're based off of the year and the month. If you've noticed that. So once again, 1511 build of Windows 10 came out in 2015 in November. And this one came out 2016 in July. It actually came out the very end of June.
Yeah, I got to tell you guys, one of the funnest,
Should have been
I don't know,
1606.
interesting thing about working here is like, I'll be at home watching a movie or having a cocktail or something, and I'll get a text from Shane. I'm like, still can't get the Java out. I'm like, how long are you working on this, man?
Yeah,
It's insane.
What?
2 in the morning, I'll get a text.
Yeah, that's this last Java. Well, we made a big change in this last Java where we actually don't, not the alternate, we don't kill the browser. But how do we do that? This was going back to Monica's question. So Monica, here, we're not using necessarily these conditions, though we could have. We're saying check for previous installations. One of the changes we made, because we don't kill the browser, is you could not install the same version of Java on top of itself.
Yeah.
Because if you did, and those browsers were running and Java was instantiated, those files in that very directory that you're replacing are going to be marked for deletion.
Yeah.
So we simply just grabbed we know what, use PDQ Inventory. We know what the application ID is for both the 64, in this case, 64 or 32-bit. We just say, hey, if this exists, then don't run it. We could have done a registry condition on this to say, don't even bother with this if this value exists. But we just did it on the detail.
I just bring that up because I'm really impressed that you love our end users enough to sit up at 2 in the morning drinking scotch and trying to do Java.
Love is a strong word.
Tolerate. You tolerate.
Our final question of the day comes from Valerie B., who, by the way, was the inspiration for an okay Steve Winwood song. Can you do a wildcard search for the file name in case you don't know the name of a specific file in the folder?
Yes. Yes. So
You could get a lot of data back.
Yeah, you could. So I'm assuming you're talking about. Let's see. Let's go back over here. Actually, I guess we're talking about conditions.
Okay,
so
yeah,
that's a good point. So let me go to Notepad++.
So we could splat that condition if there's anything in that directory.
Let's see. Well, let's find out. How can we find out? I don't know, to get this out there. Can we do the file name? Actually, I'm not sure. I don't think we can. Someone ask our developers.
We'd like to phone
I don't
friend,
think you can.
please.
I think you do. In the registry and the file scanners, you absolutely can use
do splat,
wildcards.
yeah.
Here, I think you actually have to know the file name that you're looking for, and you can only specify one file name. And I do believe.
If this was Stump the Jump, we would have.
Yeah, we would
You
have
just stumped the chumps, yeah.
you know what? I'm not sure. That's
a good one for the programmers.
I don't think we have enough time to hurry and check, but test that out yourselves. And unless Jordan or somebody is watching and knows that, I do think in the conditions you need to specify
A specific file.
the specific file or the specific type of value. Like in that case, I just said, does it start with 1?
Yeah.
Does not start with splat, but maybe that would work. Maybe I just
we gotta try that one, huh?
make it a little easier. We'll find that out. Anyway, I hope this has been beneficial to you guys. And rock on, everybody. Cheers.
Hey, thanks for watching, guys.
We'll see you next week.
Skull.
Thanks for joining the webcast today. We have a lot of winners. All right, Bailey Phillips was closest to the radio station clothing with 69. Here's how it breaks down. Button-down shirts and polos, 23. Coats and jackets, 17. T-shirts, 17. Hats, 9. Beanies, 5. Football jersey, 1. Grand total, 72. Tim D. and Valerie B., winners of PDQ swag. Everybody send me an email at webcast@adminarsenal.com. We'll get your prizes sent out to you. And don't forget, we are looking for a product support / sysadmin position. We have the link up there in our chat. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you back here next week.